And
Okay.
do you see it? Do you see it on your end?
Yes, it says restarted by Clark
It
Conover.
came up. You're good. You're good.
Good.
It's going.
Okay. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to the National Junior College Call. As I told Coach Renfro, we will put this, we're recording this, and we'll certainly get this out to the coaches on the back end. And then we'll cover the points that are made by Jimmy and Mike, who are really the guests here of honor, at the various regionals over the next 2 weeks. The majority of us here are working junior college nationals, and quite a few of us are the head officials at the regionals. So we'll make sure that between the link and the conversations, that all the points Jimmy and Mike you go over tonight get accurately communicated. Rex Anderson's the head official for the National Junior College. I'll let him make some remarks, and then Joe, we'll flip it over to you if you want to say anything, and then we'll turn it over to the speakers.
Hey, thanks, Clark. Appreciate that. Jimmy, Mike, we've got 16 officials at JUCOs this year, and as we have several years in the past, on 8 mats, 2 officials per mat for the entirety of the tournament, and it runs very, very smoothly. It's organized very well and supported very well, and I'm sure you recognize most all the names that are on here. A very, very proud group, and a group that works well together, and we've all worked well together at several events throughout the years, over the past several years, and so excited to have you guys here, and looking forward to some of the messages that you've brought us throughout the years, and especially as it's being recorded for the junior college coaches as well. Joe Renfro has been a huge supporter of ours and the officials across the board, and we really appreciate his involvement with us. Joe and I've shared a couple conversations catching up on our Oklahoma roots and connecting on the past, and I very much appreciate that as well. But we've got a coaches meeting the night before the event starts on Thursday evening in Council Bluffs, and as we have for every tournament in the past as well, and we cover a couple of points of emphasis that you all have shared with us throughout the year, and so looking forward to the messages you have, and a few of the questions that we're going to be able to throw at you guys as well, just for clarity on that, to make sure that we're all standardized as we head into the postseason. So thanks again for the opportunity, and thank you guys for your time and your expertise that you're sharing with us.
And Coach Renfro, we are recording this for posterity, so if there's anything you would like to say to your fellow coaches as a preamble.
Just echo what Rex said there. Thank you guys for your time, and you're definitely appreciated on the coaches side that you guys are explaining and going the extra mile to make sure that everybody's in sync, and not everybody's going to agree, but at least we understand where you're coming from and where we're coming from maybe. And I'm happy to give any kind of assistance needed that I can give.
Thanks, Coach. Well, I'll turn over to Jimmy and Mike without further ado.
Yeah, so hey guys, good to see everybody. Hope the season has been going well. Just kind of wanted to take a few minutes to go over a couple things. I would strongly recommend that everybody, whether it's officials or coaches, you all have access to RefQuest. I would strongly suggest that you get into the online version of the casebook. There are so far 5 articles that I've written, most of which have not been read by most people, but that's okay. But these cover specific interpretations for both existing rules as well as any one of the 13 new rules. So keep in mind, one of the major rule changes this year revolved around the video review challenge process, where it, I think, is a better rule in the sense that the coach does not have to specify one specific thing, but keep in mind this year with video review, the entire sequence can be reviewed, okay? And the objective, obviously, with video review is to get the call correct, all right? Something that I know every official on this call is committed to. So just for a point of reference, will video review be used in all of the, yes, okay. So again, this is very, very, very important here in the sense that, okay, you know, coaches can challenge, again, anything other than a fall situation. And the definition of sequence is defined as follows. The start of the sequence starts with whatever the coach is challenging. So if Coach Renfro comes and says, hey, I think that was a takedown, right? That would be the start of the sequence. The sequence ends when wrestling was stopped or should have been stopped. All right. So in this case, I'm just going to pick on Mr. Rodriguez because he's on my screen right now. But if he's the official, Coach Renfro throws the brick. He comes, says, hey, I think that was a takedown earlier. Okay. So that is the definition of the start of the sequence. Now, Albert is obligated to go and watch that footage, review that footage until he stopped the match. And let's just say he stopped it for an out of bounds call 12 seconds later. All right. Anything in that 12 seconds is fair game. So not only is Albert going to be looking to see whether or not a takedown had been earned, all right, but on top of that, let's just hypothetically say that yes, a takedown did occur, all right. So one thing that Albert would then need to have to fix is he would have to award the takedown. But let's just say 2 seconds after the takedown was awarded, he sees that the offensive wrestler applied a illegal full Nelson. All right, the hands just touched for a second. All right, that is fair play in the new video review sequence. Okay, so not only does Albert now award 3 points for a takedown, he now also has to award 1 penalty point for the illegal full Nelson. Okay. So just to be clear that, hey, sequence is everything is fair game. All right. During that entire sequence of wrestling. All right. So it is not one specific thing that we are looking for. All right. I'm not sure what the allocations are. I imagine that most every team is going to be bringing all of their wrestlers, but the respective tournament committees are going to be the ones that determine how many challenges each team gets. If it's a full team, you would obviously have 3 challenges for the event. If a coach wins a challenge, right, then they retain it. If they challenge something and the call is not changed, obviously that is counts against their allotment. All right. Also, a reminder that coaches, you are obligated, if you want to challenge something, to throw the brick in a timely manner. Okay. Now, the question always comes up, what is a timely manner? And for the purposes to avoid ambiguity, I'm going to just be so bold as to say virtually immediately. Okay. Some coaches will wait and see how a situation plays out. If you decide to do that, please know that you are doing so at your own peril. Okay. The referee could then determine that, hey, the brick was not thrown in a timely manner. And as a result, you could lose the challenge and not even have the opportunity to have the sequence looked at. Okay. So timeliness is very, very important. Officials, just a reminder that you have an unlimited number of video reviews that you can initiate as an official. There is a fine line. Again, the objective with video review is to get the call right. But you know what? If you as an official take 6 referee video reviews in the first round of the tournament, that probably says a little bit more about your officiating ability so much as it is getting the call right. So please use your discretion. I don't know whether you will be using 2-man mechanics during the entire event. I would assume so. Clark is nodding his head. Folks, just another thing that I will reiterate, the role and responsibility of the second official. One of the complaints that has been a perennial complaint is that the second official doesn't do anything. Okay. Yes, I know it's easy to zone out. Yes, I know that, when you're in the 3rd consolation round, that you're tired and so on down the line. But your job is to help the lead official get every call correct. If you see something, say something is, I think, the simplest way to put it. All right. And again, this, we all have a job to do. The second official's role, I am a big proponent of the second official, simply because I think it reduces the chance for error. Okay. Now, when it's not done properly, yeah, I agree with some of the comments that I've heard that, hey, why are we paying these guys? What do these guys do? They're window dressing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, if you all are working regionals and postseason events, you're obviously been selected for a reason. So I would just challenge you to go ahead and review that. That is in Rule 7 of the rule book. Okay. Just a couple other things that I wanted to address, particularly as we come to postseason. The weigh-in times for each of these events should be pretty clearly delineated and communicated to all parties well in advance. I'm going on the premise that with these tournaments, that weigh-ins will probably take place 2 hours before. Just a reminder that, hey, every competitor needs to be there when weigh-ins start. Okay. That is 100% a non-negotiable rule. Okay. So if weigh-ins start, let's say at 8 a.m., and you have a kid that shows up at 8:05, by rule, he was not there on time for weigh-ins. Okay. And he is by rule disqualified. Okay. So again, this is, nobody here wants to DQ a kid because he's running late, but at the same point in time, get there on time. All right. And that just, whatever. The way the rules are written in the book, officials, it's your job to enforce them. This is not I don't think this really, this is not subject to interpretation. The rules are there for a reason. Officials, your job is to enforce them, regardless of whether you agree with them or not. This season was a rules change year. Okay. So officials, we have one job, and that is to enforce the rules as they are written and the interpretations that correspond with that. All right. While we're on the subject, and again, I don't want to be the rules Nazi, so to speak, but just some things that are very, very, very clearly delineated in the rule book. Rule 9.2 addresses all the protocols for weigh-ins. It specifically says who, what, when, where, and how. Okay. Those are not subject to debate or interpretation. All right. Rules 3.2, again, addresses proper attire for competitors, coaches, and medical personnel. Okay. And guys, listen, I've gotten a lot of questions regarding, can we wear a baseball cap? The answer is no. Okay. It's not. I don't care whether it's, the cure for cancer or, whatever cause it may be. Great. Knock yourself out. All right. But you cannot wear hats or headwear during competition. Okay. You can't wear sweatsuits. You can't wear what your wife got you for Christmas. Okay. Even if it is styling. Okay. The protocols are very, 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 very clear. Okay. So again, I don't want to be the stickler, but officials, you are not doing your job if you do not enforce the rules to the letter of the law. All right. So again, I don't know what the situation is like, but I will tell you so far, based on what we've seen during this season, there are clear instances where, somebody should have been penalized for improper attire. Okay. I won't even get into like bench decorum and things of that sort. So, for example, tournaments, right? It's very, very clearly delineated. 3 per corner. Okay. That is 2 coaches, 1 medical personnel. All right. And it doesn't mean the rest of the team can line up on the perimeter of the mat. That is not allowed. That is a control of mat violation. All right. So again, I'm not making this up. This is all stuff that's in the rule book. Obviously, if you're working as an official, you took the test. We asked you questions on this. And again, your job is to enforce this. Okay. And it is the responsibility of the tournament host and the tournament committee to make sure that these rules are enforced. Okay. there have been some tournaments where, the team bench is actually in that 8-foot corner of the mat. Okay. And it's comical, but it is a direct violation of the rules. And I kind of shake my head and I have no response, right? When an official looks right at it and walks past it. All right. So again, I may be labeled the rules Nazi, but that's kind of my job. Okay. And again, we as officials lose credibility when we arbitrarily decide which rules we will and will not enforce. All right. While we're on the subject, a couple things. Tobacco products are not allowed at competitions. Okay. Means vapes, cigarettes, cigars, dip, chew, chaw, whatever you want to call it. Okay. But that's an automatic flagrant misconduct. Okay. So, you see a guy with a dip in his mouth, you don't tell him to spit it out. No, he can spit it out after you hit him for flagrant misconduct. Okay. So that's very, 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 very straightforward. Okay. And if we are talking about postseason, okay, this is the time of the season when, hey, the rules should be 100% called as they are written. All right. Let's see here. I am trying to think if there's anything else. Again, any questions about video review, or anything that I've spoken of, or anything completely non-related to anything I've said so far from a rules perspective? Because I know Dr. McCormick is going to talk about some specific situations regarding application and your role as how to call certain situations.
Jim, you have a
Jim,
question.
go ahead, Alberto, please.
Yes, please go ahead.
The question is around the uniforms that the wrestlers are wearing. Okay, the rule book is very consistent when it says that the singlets need to match from 125 for a team from 125 to heavyweight. In the case that let's say that they bring up a backup heavyweight qualifies, doesn't get a new singlets, wearing the wrong color singlet. Okay, the rule book says that we need to report that to the tournament committee. Is that all of our responsibility at that point in time? We've reported it and we're done with it?
Yes, in a tournament event, that is correct.
Okay.
And let it be their problem. Okay. And believe me, if you catch that, hey, hats off to you. Okay. But where it gets problematic, and usually what will happen is a coach from another team will narc on another team. Okay. Because they're trying to catch them in the team race and all that sort of stuff. Okay. But yeah, that's why you have a tournament committee. So yeah, that's their problem to handle.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Coach Renfro?
Just wanted to ask on the clarification of weigh-in part. Our tournament packet has came out. We have a 2-hour weigh-in on the first day and a 1-hour weigh-in on the second day. I know that's not a violation, but is that we can proceed with that, correct, Jimmy?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. So 2 hours or sooner, right?
Or
And
sooner,
so,
exactly.
yeah, that's perfectly permissible.
Our packet has came out, and I had that question asked a couple of times from a couple of different coaches, and I said, as long as it's within, it doesn't have to be 2 hours the first day and 2 hours the second day. I
Correct.
believe, now I'm not trying to put words in our national tournaments host mouth, but we also host the women's tournament at the same time. So I would believe that the reason they did that was from a scheduling standpoint of getting moving and getting moving earlier so that we can start with the women's side. And this one too, I might be ignorant for saying this, and I brought this up with Jim Fallis at our NWCA meeting. I do not believe that, and if they do, I don't have it, and I might have overlooked it. Junior college coaches have access to request. Now,
Yes,
once
they
again,
do.
okay,
Yes, they do.
I don't know. We're just uneducated on how to access that then, and so that's a problem on our part that we will figure out. But I was unaware that we did have it, so I'll figure that out in the long run.
Yeah, I think, Coach, yeah, I would strongly suggest that, the sooner you do and communicate that to all the coaches, more beneficial it'll be. Mike's posted a lot of videos that are, instructional and educational in nature with specific situations. It has all of my interpretations from this year on there. So there's a wealth of knowledge, and so yeah, I think it would only serve to help.
Well, most definitely. Like I said, I definitely appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Hey, Jimmy, on the independent review, I know we had a question on our last officials call that you addressed. If Alberto does not call the takedown and Coach Renfro throws a brick and says, I believe there was a takedown there, 12 seconds later, they go out of bounds neutral. So you judge the sequence. But in that sequence, he keeps his hands locked the majority of the time, not knowing he had a takedown.
Yes.
How do we address that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, the interpretation is that you will not penalize a wrestler, or you really can't penalize a wrestler for being in a position that he was unaware of. Okay. So in this particular case, using that scenario from earlier, if it was determined that a takedown was awarded, let's say 6 seconds into the sequence, okay, then yes, the correct call would be 3 points takedown, okay, and at that point you would declare dead time, all right, dead time, and then restart wrestling with the wrestler that earned the takedown in the top position, okay. But yeah, you cannot hit a kid for earning a takedown that he didn't know he earned, if that makes sense. So yes, dead time still applies, but again, even though instances of that will be far fewer, it does apply, and that's a perfect example of a time where it will. Correct.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Yep.
Joe.
I'm sorry to keep interrupting here. I just let's say it's a near fall situation, the takedown in a near fall situation. Let's go with the what was it? The not Dayton, no, the was it Penn State, Ohio State? Let's say at that type of situation, was it 25 that I saw? I don't know, whichever weight it was there, the kid actually is in a near fall criteria position. Will that, because he doesn't know it's a takedown, you can't award the near fall criteria, or am I incorrect with that?
Well, so actually that's an interesting scenario. So question number one, the takedown, if memory serves me correctly, was not awarded. And on review, it was not awarded. It was confirmed that was not a takedown. Okay. That being said, if a takedown were to have been awarded on review, yeah, near fall applies. He after the takedown had been established, had there been 2 seconds or 2 consecutive seconds or longer where the defensive wrestler's shoulders, were in criteria, yes, near fall is fair game there. Okay. So where we're stopping action and the differentiation is an illegal act or technical violation would then substantiate dead time. In this case, it's a takedown, and he would have been entitled to earn near fall points as well, if that answers your question, Coach. So
yes, sir, it does. Just
Great.
still kind of confused. I mean, you guys got a hard enough job as is. I appreciate everything that you give and everything that you do. You're a whole part of the mechanics, but that's kind of one of those, weird ones too, of the wrestler. It's all right if it's potentially dangerous, or it's all right if it's an illegal situation, but it's not all right near fall.
right.
Just a
Right.
kind of a weird one to dance around. Hopefully that never happens, but it probably will. And in that particular situation, it looked like it very well could have, had it been awarded 2, it would have definitely been a 2 near fall. But I'm glad my guy wasn't there.
Are you going to have independent reviewers, Clark, at any of these events?
At the national tournament we do, and Rex is our independent reviewer. Correct, Rex?
Okay.
Right, Jimmy. We have it's myself and there's 2 of us actually that sit on the independent review at the head table with a couple of monitors and a video playback team there. And so, right, as the challenge is made on the mat, then it's brought to us to review it there
Okay.
at the head table.
Okay, so just one point of clarification. So coaches, if you do challenge a call on the mat and it is not overturned by the officials, okay, well, in this case, it would go directly to the independent reviewers, okay? However, the exception would be if the referees take a video review and they do not change their call, you still, as a coach, have the right to challenge, okay? In which case, you do have a second life, so to speak. And yeah, the independent reviewer could then take a look at that. So yeah, just to clarify that as well. So
Hey, Jimmy,
yes.
can I interrupt for a second?
Please.
I had to step away for a phone call the first 5 minutes. I apologize, but did you say anything about the flow chart we put on RefQuest?
No, I did not, but that's a great reminder. Yeah, we did kind of create a flow chart that is on RefQuest that goes through every, I mean, really, you just kind of got to follow the arrows. And if you can read, you know, it should be fairly self-explanatory. So that'll be a good, yeah.
For guys that are not kind of used to bricks or challenges and video review, it walks you through every pretty much possible scenario. And, you know, if you guys don't have access to RefQuest or can't get it, I would certainly recommend getting a copy of that and then making copies because it should help quite a bit.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to send that to you, Clark, because I still got the flow chart. So yeah.
And Rex, I can bring those copies to you if you can hand them out at the coaches meeting.
I would, yeah. I'd like to even be a little more proactive than that, even Clark. And if we can get it to Joe and have Joe send it out to all the coaches, and then just like you said, Clark, we'll have copies at the coaches meeting as well. Joe, is that okay?
That'd be fun. I will not send them out to the coaches individually. I'll send them out to their region representatives, and that is their responsibility to get it out to them. So if they do not get it, it is not be because of a lack of effort on me getting them to the region people. But long.
Thanks, Joe. Bob.
My question is specific to drop down. Had this season that had not had it in the past, but bottom man drops, and so obviously top man can now drop without a count. But instead, top man went to a side headlock situation. Is the top man granted the same ability to apply a side headlock after bottom man drops without a count?
Yeah, Mike, I'll let you take that because that's yeah, that's you know, kind of more in your wheelhouse there. So
I would say to you that I don't know that I've ever witnessed that since we started doing all these crazy counts. Certainly if you go to my legs, I can go to your leg. You know, typically with a side headlock, as long as the offensive man is working towards or near fall or improving towards that position anyways, we let it go. And if he stops or becomes stagnant in his action, you know, we can initiate a count loudly to make sure the top guy knows that the count is on him. Quite frankly, I don't know that I've ever seen that. That's a great question. My instinct would be that yes, it's okay if as long as the bottom man went to my legs first. I don't see the difference between me going to his legs or his head. Either way, there should be no count. But that's interesting. I'd love to see a video of that if you could drum it up just for educational purposes.
Sure. If you could, the situation is bottom man gets into kind of like a Peterson position, and he's still chest facing the mat and starting a roll. So top man applies the side headlock to the far arm and head, and I didn't count because I felt that he should be given the same latitude as he would to be able to drop to a lower leg hold. But just wanted to get
great question. Jimmy, do you have an opinion on that? I mean, I kind of agree with you, Bob. I would have done the same thing in a Peterson position where the guy reaches under and you know, you're trying to defend, put that side headlock on. But
yeah, I'd have to think through it a little bit more, but yeah, off the top of my head, and again, this is not an official interpretation, but I'm inclined to agree.
Thank you.
Clark, by the way, I just sent you the copy of the flow chart. So it's a PDF, so nobody can doctor it or anything like that. So.
Hey, Jimmy, I got a quick question.
Yes, please.
You mentioned this flow chart. I was just on center mat and I couldn't find it. What is the document titled? So I'll know to look for that.
Okay, so it's under news and announcements.
Okay.
And it is about the fourth item down. It says 2023-24 NCAA Wrestling Video Review Challenge Sequence.
Okay. Yep. Got it. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, I've kind of covered my topics. I'll still be on for the rest of the call if there are any questions, but I'm going to go ahead and Clark, if it's okay, turn it over to Mike McCormick, and he'll talk through certain situations and things that he's seen. So, Mike, I'll go right to you.
Sure. Well, thanks,
Thanks,
guys. Appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk to you fellas. And listen, I'm going to, there were a few questions sent to me. I will discuss those. If you have questions about those specific situations, please don't hesitate to interrupt. And certainly when we're done, if you have questions, let me know. So I was asked to go over the drop down count and the new kind of interpretation this year that's a little bit different than last year. So just to reiterate to everybody, anytime the offensive man grabs an ankle this year, there is a mandatory count. Okay, that includes a tight waist, a claw, ankle, a wrist, ankle. If I have a boot in, sag, cross face, drape, and I grab an ankle, there's a count. All of those positions, there's a count. And if you reach a 5-second count before he releases it, it's a stall warning, right? If he lets go at 3 and 4 and then he goes right back to it, and he lets go at 3 and 4 and he goes right back to it, you could certainly call him for traditional stalling, for gaming the system. All right. And the two kind of, at the beginning of the season, anyways, kind of lots of discussion about them. And quite frankly, as the season's worn on, we haven't hardly seen any of them. The first was the bow and arrow, or the back bow, because by rule, we're supposed to count when we reach back to grab that guy's ankle, right? And so Jimmy, after lots and lots of discussion with coaches and people on the rules committee, we came to the conclusion that, the whole reason these counts were put in was to increase action on the top wrestler, right? And can you imagine what would happen if the guy reached back, got a bow and arrow, stepped up, put the guy at 80 degrees, and we're at 3 on our 3 count, and then he's at 55 degrees when we get our 4th count, and then he's at 50 when we hit our 5th count, and then we would stop it and warn the top guy for stalling. That is not, in my opinion, and Jimmy's opinion, the intent of this rule, right? And so the interpretation that Jimmy made was that as long as the offensive man, again, is improving or advancing towards a near fall position, we do not have to start a count in that position. Okay. Now, if he sits on the butt, he sits on the thigh, he readjusts, he reaches back to grab the shoelaces, and he's not really doing anything, you can absolutely then start a count. Loud and clear, green 1, green 2. That guy has an opportunity to do one of two things: to let go of that ankle and try something else, or get going. And, that's his decision, not yours. So, at the beginning of the season, there was lots of discussion about that. And quite honestly, I may have seen it called 3 times this year, 4 times at best. The other situation was a bent leg Turk, or a regular Turk, where we reach back and grab the ankle. And, the defensive man in those positions, really his only way to get out of that is to crawl out of it. And the offensive man is to kind of post and grab and reach and kind of crawl back into into the Turk, or reach back and get those laces. So that situation, same interpretation. As long as the guy's advancing or progressing, there is no count. You can always start a count, but there's no mandatory count. The one other situation that's a little bit different from last year is there is no mandatory count when the offensive wrestler is still on his knees, and the defensive wrestler is on his feet. In other words, if I was riding Jimmy and the whistle blew and he squared up with me very quickly, but I was in on a single, and he was on his knees, the count starts, right? Because we're on his knees. Last year, if Jimmy stood up and his weight was borne by his feet and his feet only, not a hand on the mat, the count continued and or started if it hadn't already. This year, we are affording that offensive man an opportunity to try and finish that takedown. Okay, so what kind of drove this decision? One of the things was a match last year in the Iowa Penn State match where, what's the kid's name? Kemmerer was wrestling Starachi. Starachi was down. He immediately turned in. Kemmerer grabbed his leg, tried to finish, knee slide, changed off to a double, face full of hips, doing everything he can do to finish the takedown. But Angel got to a 5-second count. And so he was hit with a mandatory stall. And now our question to Angel was, would you have called stalling in that position if it wasn't mandatory? And he said, absolutely not. The guy was trying to finish the takedown. So in that instance, or excuse me, in that position, if he's on his feet now, not a hand on the mat, if the hand on the mat, the count goes. But if he is totally standing on his feet, the offensive man is still on his knees, you do not have to immediately start a mandatory count. You can give that guy the opportunity to try and finish the takedown. Having said that, you can call traditional stalling and you can still start the count. Okay, it's just not immediate. You kind of give that guy some instruction, improve. If he chooses not to improve, then you have decisions to make. But different than last year, it is not an immediate count or mandatory count. Okay. Any other questions with drop down? I think as the season goes on, guys clean that up pretty good. There's not a tremendous amount of questions. Top stalling, a big point of emphasis at the beginning of the season was that the offensive man had to be more aggressive, quite frankly. And there was an interpretation sent out last year that said that the top guy wasn't responsible for turning him. He was only responsible for breaking him down. And so didn't take the coaches long to figure that out, that they didn't have to turn anybody. They just had to ride guys. And so imagine again, I'm riding Jimmy on his right side. I have a claw with my right hand up on his left shoulder. My left leg is lacing his right ankle. My right leg is in the mat driving forward. And that hold, quite frankly, in my part of the country is referred to as a Big Ten ride or a grind ride. Really not doing anything other than dragging that ankle and trying to break the guy down. Really no intention of turning the man. Last year, we were kind of handcuffed by the interpretation that was put out. This year, different interpretation. Offensive man has to work to break him down. Also has to work towards a near fall. And so we use that as an example at the beginning of the season in several videos, whether they were created in the wrestling room by me and two kids or actual live matches that we posted. And haven't seen much of it. It really didn't take long for those guys to not do it because we were banging them for stalling. About a month and a half, 2 months into the season, we started seeing a ton of Blair rides, and they were using those kind of as a stall tactic as well. Really didn't see many turns with those rides, just kind of riding. And so if you see someone riding someone with a Blair ride for 1 minute and 30 seconds and there's nowhere, near falls not in the equation, chances are the top guy needs to get hit. Kids are getting savvy. They're coached well. The coaches coach them to push the envelope and get away with whatever, quite honestly, we as officials allow them to get away with. And so if you see a kid riding someone with a Blair ride for 1.5 minutes and they haven't turned them, they probably should have been ringed up. If you're thinking it probably should have happened. And so those two specific moves at the beginning of the season anyways, were kind of on our radar, and I just haven't seen a ton of it. It didn't take long for guys to start ringing guys up on the Blair ride. They just don't do it, to be quite honest with you. If they do, it's 20 seconds and they change off to something else. I think the officials nationwide have done a good job of cleaning that up. So I did see a couple videos that were sent to me with baiting for locked hands in the rear standing position. And the video that I posted couldn't have been scripted any better. I mean, the front kid, I'll stand up, was like this and literally went down to a knee and went like this to the ref. And the ref just looked at him and called locked hands. And so that in that instance on the video that I posted, the referee should not have called locked hands. In fact, he could have called unsportsmanlike conduct, baiting by the defensive man. So, don't get baited into that as an official. You don't see that often. You see it at high school. I really hadn't seen it as egregious as that one I posted in college in 15 years. But don't get baited into that. The other thing that I would say that I think we don't do a good job on is being patient when they're in a rear standing and calling stalling on the offensive man. I see it called within 3 seconds, 4 seconds often. And the rule book doesn't say that he has to successfully return the man to the mat. It says he has to attempt to return to the mat, the man to the mat. And so I see where guys will lift them. The guy laces an ankle. They reset their feet. They lift them. One leg's flying. The guy touches the mat. One hand pops back up. Then his hands get apart. And then the referee calls stalling immediately. So, I would say be patient in that position and really focus on, is the offensive man attempting to return him to the mat, or is he just kind of standing there with his hands locked and not trying to do anything? I think that's an area that just countrywide at all levels we can improve upon. I think that's a gimme stall call too often, and the kid hasn't earned it, to be quite honest with you. So I would say be patient in that. I know Jimmy went over the video review. Oh, here you go. I didn't even get to that. Yeah, rear standing. Do you have a 5-second count to return the guy to the mat? No, you absolutely do not have a 5-second count. And I love it when coaches yell that, start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's not a count anywhere in the book that says you have 5 seconds to return a man to the mat. It says you have to attempt to return him to the mat. So that kind of follows my comments from a second ago. Other than that, reaction time I'll touch on real briefly. Joe mentioned it a minute ago. There were a couple of situations this past weekend that are tough positions to be in as an official. I don't want to say 50-50, but they're damn hard calls on big stages with lots of pressure and lots of people watching. And the only change in reaction time from last year is in the rear standing position. The hand touch takedown is gone. And I think that's a good thing. I don't think the fans understood it. I don't think the coaches understood it. I don't think half the wrestlers understood it. I don't think half the officials understood it. So I'm glad to see that go. But in the last 2 weeks, we'll put it this way. In the first 2.5 months of the season, I thought we did an excellent job of being patient and using, reaction time, which is different for every position, by the way, and different for every official, by the way. I thought we did a really good job on takedowns and being patient and allowing reaction time. The last 2 weeks, last 2 weekends, I don't know what happened, man, but it got wonky really quick, where guys are getting 3 and 4 seconds of reaction time. And so after the couple of matches this past weekend, Jimmy and I really felt compelled to put a statement out. We did today. If you haven't seen it, it's on RefQuest. And so, especially me, right, as an official who is friends with all these guys that now I'm in charge of critiquing, if you will. Mistakes are made. If you get in those kind of environments long enough and enough times, the crap's going to hit the fan at some point. And, I spoke to those officials this weekend and had heart-to-heart conversations with them. And you guys that are on this call know that it's not easy what we do. I don't care what level it is. It's no different. There just might be more people watching. That's the only difference. But there were a couple of situations that Jimmy and I felt strongly about, and the rules committee, quite honestly, wanted us to make a statement about. And so that the result is the comments that Jimmy and I put out today. So you guys are welcome to go on there and check it out. But reaction time, honestly, I thought had been really good all year until about 2 weeks ago. I think we're giving too much reaction time in certain positions than we should. Scoring at that level is really hard. Guys get that position. They've earned a takedown and then an escape, as opposed to nothing, and then the guy rolls out, and then it's too late to give a takedown. And so that's my 2 cents. If you didn't see it, you need to go look at it. And if you haven't read our comments, go on RefQuest. You can read them. Do you have anything to add to that, Jimmy?
You know what? I'll just echo what Mike said. You know, you guys have a tough job. Mike and I have both blown whistles on big stages, and you know, it's tough. Okay. And I will say this much. I think it's harder to officiate now than it was 5 years ago. Definitely
Much
harder to
harder.
referee now than it was 10 years ago. Okay. So, you know, here's the reality is that, you know, I just want to make it clear that, look, reaction time still very, very much exists. Okay. It only doesn't exist for locked hands on the mat. That's it. Everything else, there is reaction time. And so, and then people ask me, well, what's reaction time? And reaction time is going to vary, right? I mean, in some cases, it could be a millisecond, in others, it could be 3 seconds. Okay. So, again, you know, as soon as a kid's close to a takedown, what's every coach in the corner screaming? 3, you know, or 2, those that are slower, right? And, you know, again, I know that you know, it can be influenced, but you know, as an official, you know, your judgment is part of the reason that they're paying you the big bucks, right? Is to make that determination. And again, it's a tough situation. I do think, as Mike said, that there are instances where, you know, maybe too much reaction time has been given. Conversely, though, I also think there were a couple situations where, you know, maybe not enough was given. Okay. But we all learn from that. Anybody that's blown a whistle can empathize with these tough situations. Okay. And so, you know, again, I just, you know, it's never going to go away, not in folk style. And, you know, I think to the extent possible, you know, we want to get as consistent as we can possibly be across the board. And, but yeah, it's definitely a difficult situation. And look, you know, the reality is nowadays, because everybody has a phone and everybody's got a camera and social media is rampant and blah, 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 blah. Okay. Nobody cares about the 999 calls that you nailed. Okay. It's always that one tough call that's thrown into the spotlight and so on down the line. So I could go on and on, but you know, it's a difficult job. But again, you know, the reason that you're working these regional and national championships is there for a reason. And so, you know what, I just, you know, I'll leave it at that. But yeah.
Patinsky.
Yeah, I guess this is more of a mechanic question in regard to this issue. I think you know, a lot of the issues we're having with judging or reaction time stem from the evolution of the scramble wrestling, right? We're seeing a lot more, you know, leg passes down into, you know, down into legs, ankles, all that kind of stuff. And so we're kind of having to wait on our calls, right, to establish that reaction time. So my question ultimately would be, obviously we want to get it right every time, but would you err on the side of flying the points as opposed to holding your points in regard to reaction time and awarding takedowns, or the opposite? You know, because I've always, you know, in my conversations with guys, it's like better to be, you know, slightly late than slightly early, because you know, wiping points just isn't a good look, but also missing points isn't a good look either.
I agree with you 100%, Chris. And look, I talk to Jimmy twice a day, 7 days a week. We've talked twice already today. So this is our third time. But you know, Timmy before me said it all the time, and I've said it, on several occasions this year already. In my opinion, as an official, it's better to be patient, and it's better to be a half a second late than a half a second early. Like you said, Chris, it's a whole lot easier to fix things or clean things up with video, especially if you're lucky enough to have video review, right? If you don't have video review, different story. If you have video review and an assistant, 100% agree that it's better to be a half a second late than a half a second early, because you can always go look at it. You have another set of eyes with hopefully a buddy that you trust that can say, yeah, let's go look at it. I think we need to add a half a second of riding time, or whatever the case may be. If you throw it up early, even though the whole sequence thing this year, hopefully can clean that up, because in the years past, there were always instances at the Division I tournament where a referee would throw up a 2, in the past, literally a half a second, not a full second, but too soon. And, Pat Santoro, being the brainiac he is from Lehigh, would throw a brick and say, I'm challenging when the referee awarded the takedown, not that there was eventually a takedown. And he was right, because the referee threw it up too soon. And that's kind of what prompted the rule change this year. Because, look, whether it was me or anybody else, why should my mistake for throwing my hands up a half a second too soon penalize the kid who eventually still got the takedown? You know what I mean? A half a second later. And so, quite honestly, I had written a paragraph. I mean, I copy and pasted for 4 years the same damn comments in our rule survey, about it. And I kind of called it the football rule. 10, 15 years ago, when there was a fumble in college or the NFL, I mean, whistles blew, beep, 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 like play stop. You watch a football game now and there's a fumble, dudes get out of the way. They just let the play happen, and then they go look at it on the video and fix it, right? And so it makes sense to me. It passed the smell test, if you will, that if you're half a second too soon, it's just harder to, with the sequence, we can clean it up, but it's easier to clean it up if it's a half a second late than a half a second earlier. So
agree 100%. And you know what? I will tell you this, because nobody knows video review, the sequence and the challenge process better than I do. Okay. And I will tell you right now that more harm than good will come from hanging something too early, because you may not be able to fix it because you were a split second too early. Okay. However, being a little late to the party, yeah, you can fix that much easier. Okay.
Especially like think sudden victory, I would think just, from watching wrestling, usually we're a little more patient in sudden victory on takedowns, right? Because we know the ramifications of once we blow that whistle, the match is over. And so I think, yeah, again, better to be a half a second late than a half a second early. The other thing that I would just comment on for you guys is, don't be afraid of the video review. The first year it came out at the Nationals, I don't know, 7 years ago, I think I turned over 3 of my own calls. If you guys are like me, you want to get it right, and you don't care at what expense, right? And if you got to eat crow, so be it. I always kind of have the mantra is we want to do what's right for the kids. And, especially if you have an assistant, you guys are going to look good together. You're going to look bad together. So why not go look at it? If it doesn't pass the smell test and you make a bang, bang call on the edge and you look up at your assistant and Jimmy gives me this stank eye that I know he doesn't agree with my decision, then guess what? I'm going to look at it. And so don't be afraid to utilize, that's a great tool, another arrow in our quiver, so to speak. Like, why wouldn't you go look at it? Like, that's why it's there. Don't be, don't let your ego get in the way, man. Don't be intimidated by video review, and don't be intimidated by a coach that throws a brick. That coach has a job to do. Joe, I don't know Joe that well. Joe coaches his kids. Joe recruited his kids. He worries about his kids behaving on the weekend. He worries about their grades. Joe wants his kids to win. We don't give a shit who wins. We're not supposed to. He's got a job to do. We got a job to do. Not the same job. So when Joe throws a brick, don't take it personally. Go look at it. I mean, whatever. He's allowed to throw a brick. You shouldn't take it personally. Just go look at it. I would say, listen to your assistant. If he feels strongly about something, then, listen to him. That's what he's there for. The assistant should always stay 180 degrees. The assistant should always give the guy with the whistle the best point of view, specifically in near fall positions. If a takedown goes away from the guy with the whistle, like feet to back, and it goes right in front of the assistant, in that case, the assistant should stay there until the head official gets over there, because he might have to count near fall, and if Clark's officiating with me and a takedown goes into his lap away from me, feet to back, and I get over there and he says, I already got one, and then I get one, then it's two, and that's how you just need to communicate. So stay 180 degrees, except when it's feet to back into the assistant. First on, last off as the assistant. You should be the first guy that walks out onto the mat, stays across the mat, looking at the head table, looking at both corners. So if there's any shenanigans, you are witness to it. And likewise, at the end of the match, you should go to that same spot, because if it was a heated match, it's an emotional sport. You can watch the handshake. You can watch the wrestlers go to the corners, whether they shake hands or not. Sometimes it's better that they don't, but when they do, sometimes things are said, and that's when the crap hits the fan. And so it's rare that the guy with the whistle who's walking back to the table is going to be able to witness all that. So it's really important that the assistant officials stay on that other side of the mat until they clear the mat, so you can pay attention to what's going on. I always say to guys that are officiating, leave your egos at the door. Be confident, but don't be standoffish. The coach is allowed to ask you questions. Like, don't be offended because he has a question. Don't be offended because he may not agree with your call. He's got a job to do. He wants that kid to win. You're not supposed to care who wins. So don't take offense to the fact that he doesn't agree with you, right? That's pretty typical. Unless he MFs you. And in which case, you still got to listen to him. Then you just penalize it. It's no big deal. Any other questions?
Hey, Mike, we had a question submitted. We know hand touch is gone, but we do see kids put their hands down and put weight bearing on that quad pod or on the tripod. What's the reaction time in that situation? Or is when that weight is distributed forward?
Yeah. So I honestly, again, is that easy? That's not easy. I lots of times go by, is it one hand or two? Is it a hand and a push back up? Is it two hands and push back up? Or is it just like a touch and then bam, I'm back to my feet? More likely to award a takedown if both hands hit the mat and he pushes back into the offensive man, if you will. A lot of times when I was refereeing, before they had the hand touch takedown, what I would say is if that guy's hand wasn't touching the mat, would he fall forward and hit his, would his chest and head fall to the mat? And if it did, I was given a takedown,
Hey, Coach Renfro, and I know Eric was there too as an official, from your national duels that you hosted, the successful duels you had 2-3 weeks ago, was there any scenarios that came up or questions that coaches had afterwards that you think should be addressed?
I can't think of any offhand, Clark. We're getting ready to head to regionals, and my head's usually not focused on past events. But
Sure.
It's just the questions again, and Mike covered it, and so did Jimmy a little bit. It was just a confusing talk of the stalling on top. How long do you get? I mean, because at the beginning of the year, it seemed like when we were up in Nebraska wrestling, it was like some of them, boom, right away. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, you're not turning. It was right away, which is what we were what I was kind of told. And then throughout the year, as it went on, it was a little bit more flexible, so to speak, because a kid, you can't expect a turn immediately. He does have to break him down. He does have to apply pressure before he can put a turn on and actually go to work and set himself up. So I think that's smoothened out a little bit, but it was just confusing again. It is what it is. And Mike hit the nail on the head with, as a coach, I kind of know that Clark, in a situation, if you're going out of bounds, it doesn't matter what color of singlet you have on, or it doesn't matter if I agree or disagree with it, he's probably going to hit this guy for stalling. And so as a coach, you're telling your wrestlers, hey, you cannot give yourself any kind of opportunity in that situation, because it's probably not going to work out in your favor. And I think that's what coaches need to be doing, is coaching their kids and not worried about what you guys are doing, because you got your job, we got our job, administrators have their job, wrestlers have their job, and everybody, fans have their job to stay in the stands and stay away from the mats. And, as long as everybody works together like that, I think it's a good situation. But I'm rambling on, but I do not recall any offhand. I hope I'm not representing our coaches improperly here, but I don't think we had any situations that were, pertinent for this conversation right now.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
Hey, just one other thing I need to add, Clark. Again, it's a long season. Everybody's amped up. As Mike stated earlier, there can be a lot of emotion, particularly as it comes to qualifying events and so on down the line. So officials, just a reminder that if you have unsportsmanlike conduct that occur after a match, right, per rule, you are obligated to inform a member of the coaching staff that the wrestler has been penalized for unsportsmanlike conduct. Okay. So if the kid, let's say, shoves his opponent after the match, okay, that would be unsportsmanlike conduct. Okay. Now you call it, but you have not yet informed the coach that their kid has been hit for unsportsmanlike conduct. So the wrestler then sees you signaling unsportsmanlike conduct, and he decides that he's going to call you something not so nice. Okay. That's a second unsportsmanlike. Now, I know that the temptation, and everybody's thinking, hey, that's two unsportsmanlike. No. It's one that's simultaneous violations until you inform the coach that their wrestler has been penalized for unsportsmanlike conduct. So just a reminder that, hey, you can't just make the signal and say, hey, that's one. And then if there's another act of unsportsmanlike conduct, that's two. You need to inform a member of the coaching staff. So just a reminder for everybody on that. So simultaneous violations until a member of the coaching staff has been informed. So
I saw Torvik's finger go up, and then I saw Rex's hand go up.
Yeah, just real quick question. Mike, I had to step away for a minute, and I know you talked about grabbing the ankle and drop down. So if you touched the base on this, I apologize. But there's a perception I've had recently with some coaches who think, their top guy can run a bow and arrow, and I can't call a drop down count. So going back to Kansas City, when we had our convention, it was my understanding we give them a little bit of reaction time, try to get the guy moving towards near fall. And once that is stopped, that's when we start our count, right? So say the hips are glued to the mat, the guy's not moving over. We give him a couple seconds, say reaction time wise, and then we start our count, correct?
Yeah. So I'll just kind of repeat, I hope, exactly what I said. So once that, bow and arrow is applied, as long as the offensive man is advancing or progressing, we don't have to start that count.
Right.
If he sits on the thigh or sits on the butt, or is reaching back trying to get the ankle, and is not advancing or progressing, then absolutely you loudly and clearly start your count so that he hears you and he knows that he's got to do one of two things: get going and advance or progress towards near fall, or let go, and possibly take a stall call. So yeah, you're absolutely right. You can still have a count in that position. It's just not mandatory from the moment it's grabbed.
Right. Correct. We give him a little time to work it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Rex, then Alberto.
Yeah, Jimmy, just to follow up on the sequence that you were giving on notifying about the unsportsmanlikes, we've done this the past at least 3 years at JUCOs, and I really like the practice. Just want to get your opinion on it, that if we have an official who gives an unsportsmanlike, especially toward the end of the match or whatever the case may be, or even in the match, that official notes that on the bout card, or it's sent through the computer to the head table. Then we call the head coach to the head table after the match and notify them there, and then it's announced over the PA system, trying to take a little bit of the fire away from the coach official dynamic who's already been hit with that unsportsmanlike, and then following up obviously with a notification that may be off color or taken in the wrong way. We're trying to take that fire away. Are you in support of that mechanic?
It's kind of difficult to say. I mean, context, I think, really matters here. I understand the rationale behind that, and it's really not my place to say, okay, this is how you should or shouldn't do it. I think if it's a heated situation, I think sometimes you may have to circumvent that process and just say, Coach, he's already been hit for one, right? You better take him away before he does something really stupid or whatever. But that's really, I think, more up to you as head official and tournament administration as to how you want to handle something like that. There is no rule interpretation per se.
Okay, good. And I think let me clarify that. I believe if it's on the competitor, we do that mat side between the official and the coach. This is on the coach. If a coach, for example, has been given an unsportsmanlike, we'll take that away from the mat and administer that at the head table.
Oh yeah. I think that's how they do it. That is how they do it at the national tournament.
Great.
So
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Alberto, you're muted, Alberto.
Sorry about that. My question is around video review and flagrant misconduct. By rule, if there's a flagrant misconduct on the mat, that is to be reviewed. However,
yes.
When you use an independent reviewer, does the mat official review that, and then the independent reviewer review it, or is it just the independent reviewer, or is it one or the other? Is it both?
That's a good question. Mike, I think it's the official, right?
Yeah, it's on the official. Well, look, we've only had independent reviewers at the D1s for, I guess this is the 4th year. Never had a flagrant misconduct, so that's never come about. But in the rule book, it does say that the official must review the call.
Yeah.
So, I would be of the opinion that yes, whoever called the flagrant misconduct is the guy or the assistant as well. They look at it together. Until I'm told otherwise, that's the way we'll probably do it.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, I'm just gonna check real quick.
Albert, Art and I had one two years ago at the JUCO National Championships. Art had it. I was his assistant. We reviewed it. Matt's side made the decision after the review as well. We confirmed it after the review, and then also tournament administration also looked at it and confirmed it as well.
It says specifically in the rule book that it is the referee. So I don't think that we're going to allow independent reviewers to overturn a flagrant call, because that's against the spirit of it. So yeah.
Okay.
Now, and Joe stepped away, but at junior college, my understanding, Rex, too, is that there is an appeals process to overturn a flagrant misconduct that goes to the coaches and officials, a formal appeal process at junior college, which is a little bit different than NCAA. So that's the one nuance with JUCOs.
Okay. But I think to get to that point, to what Jimmy was saying too, Clark, I think we do review that at Matt's side to then make our decision as a group of officials and then pass it on to that review process or appeals process.
I think you'd be part of the appeals process now, Rex. That's just why I said that.
I'm on the other side of it now. You're right.
Well, I want to be respectful of time. We said we hold this to 75 minutes. I know that Dr. McCormick and Jimmy's time is so valuable. We really appreciate you taking time out of your lives away from your family to be with us today. We did record this call. We'll send it out to Joe and ask him to send it to each of the regional advisors and look at it before the regionals this weekend and next weekend. The ICWA will have a call for postseason. I have a tentative date, but I got to make sure Jimmy and Mike are available. So I don't want to quite announce it yet. But we'll go from there. So should have one more crack at these two gentlemen before our national tournament. So have a great regionals, guys. I'm sure we'll get them all right. And we'll go from there.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
guys.
Thanks,
Good
Mike.
night.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Jimmy. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, guys.